Welcome to Project Insight's Power Tutorial Series. Today we're diving into a challenge many organizations face as projects grow more complex: disconnection from project financials. Project financials often begin with a solid plan, but once execution starts, proposals, budget, time entries, expense billing, actual costs
Yeah.
can quickly become fragmented across multiple systems and spreadsheets. When that happens, it becomes difficult to understand how the projects are truly performing against the original plan. In today's session, we'll show you how Project Insight connects the financial directly within the work as it's being executed, giving project leaders, PMOs, and finance teams real-time visibility into project performance. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone will be on mute. Please feel free to use the chat as we go along, as some of you are already doing. Good morning, all. Today's session will be approximately 30 minutes in length, and you will be able to rewatch this by using this same link that you're on right now. My name is Matthew Sparks. I'm the Director of Sales and Business Development here at Project Insight. With me is our co-founder and CEO, Steve West. Steve, you ready to get going?
Yeah, definitely. We've been, over the years, we put a lot of effort into making time tracking and budgeting and all of these features working together, and I'm excited to show everybody.
Yeah, and I think to that point, we're here on the home screen within Project Insight, and that's an important kind of part of the equation of what Steve just mentioned, because each of these components that we're going to go through, you can use some or all of within your own Project Insight workspace, depending upon the workflows that you might be engaged in, right, Steve?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have clients of ours that each different departments track budgets different ways. They need different features, so you can use all of the features we're about to show or just some. And I would say most of our customers pick a set of different ways that they track budgets and they go with that. But we have had situations where one team is doing one thing and another team is doing another thing. So you'll see all the different ways to track different aspects of budget here.
Yeah, what's great about all of that is that's all driven by the add-ons within Project Insight. We have wonderful documentation that for how to implement some or all of these pieces as well that we'll send out as a part of the follow-up, but that is available on our website. So we're going to get started here within one specific project. And I'm here on this project that's called Phoenix Regional Headquarters. I'm on what we call the project overview screen, and this is going to give us an overview of some of those those financial numbers right here as well. So what we can see is the fact that we have proposed a specific amount for this project. We have a budget that is the same as the proposal. We have a work total, which we'll explain as we go through, but this is the combination of all of our effort in order to get this done. We can see
effort and expenses.
That's right. Good call out, Steve. It's labor and non-labor, and we'll explain the differentiation of both.
Yeah, in the schedule.
In the schedule, correct. I have what has actually been realized from said schedule, right? And then I have anything that's been invoiced out. So that's the money that we have coming into the project. Again, some or all of these may be used specifically around these two, the budget total or the proposal total, but we will walk through both of those right now as a part of this tutorial. So
Yeah.
here,
And one thing to note about that is that all of those numbers, we track both actual and billable values optionally either way. So
that's a really great call out, Steve. I was going to touch on that in a little bit, but the idea is, each of these numbers could theoretically have a secondary number to it, right? Which is the billable part to that. So I can understand what our internal costs will be versus what we plan to, profit off of that. So here we are on the project add edit screen. We are looking at the budget tab, and we're in the budget details. What I've done to do this is I've clicked on the little tag up top here, which then pulls up our additional dialog box. And this is this methodology where I'm saying this is the big bucket that we have for this particular project. You can just make it a singular number. So I've got $3,925,000 to execute this. Or as we've done here, we've gotten more granular as to say when we're going to be getting those disbursements in, right? When those funds become accessible to us.
This is the
Um, mhm.
top-down budget option. You don't need to put tasks in or anything to put it in to put this in. And a lot of times you might use this to when you're roughing a project out to say this is what our budget's going to be. And it's a real easy way to get a solid number that you can build your schedule off of.
That's right. You can also then, the same way that you can with proposals, which we're going to go to next, is you can see the difference between what my bucket or my top down is versus what we actually think it's going to be, right? So this is
Right.
ultimately how much I have to execute.
Yeah, and on this screen, we're not showing it, but you can actually break these numbers down by labor and expenses, putting the hours, the rate, and it'll auto-calculate for you. We're trying to keep it as simple as possible, but you can put a little more granularity on this number if you need to.
That's right. Sometimes when customers want to get more granular with this same big bucket piece, they will use a proposal, right? And this is a proposal for this same project, Phoenix Regional Headquarters, where I can see, those same kind of amounts and the same dates of when we'll be realizing those. But in this particular instance, I'm tying them to milestones within the project specifically. This can be much more complicated, and we have a wonderful power tutorial on this kind of idea of sell, work, and bill, where we get more into the granularity of what can be on a proposal. But the idea here is if I want to show more detail associated with that, I can do so via proposal.
Yeah, and on here you can see expenses, you can see time. This could be a sales order. Sometimes, like what Matt was saying, we have a whole other webinar on this where the order comes in and this basically mimics whatever that order was. But also, you don't have to be taking an order or making a proposal. You can just put the budget detail in here. And what's nice about this is that we all know what happens is the accounting system try to give you a hierarchy. Here are or the salesperson says this is what we've done. A lot of times people make the big mistake of trying to make their work breakdown structure line up exactly to the proposal lines. And we all know that it doesn't most of the time. So this allows you to have a place where where this is what we thought the budget was going to be. This is what we said it was going to be. And you're not tied, your schedule's not tied to this. It can be different and we can still track against it to see what did we say our proposed values were, and what is our schedule and what is our actual. So this is a really powerful tool. You can also use it not for sales orders. So anytime you have, this is a budget with all the line items, this is what we use for that.
That's right. You can connect these pieces into the tasks within the WBS if that's the way that you want to do it, or it can just be this kind of high level piece of what we're showing here.
And so you can launch a project from here, and you can have more than one proposal in a project as well. So like, let's say you started with an initial budget, you have a change order, a new proposal comes in with that change, and you could aggregate all of it together and still track it separately.
That's right. Now, what's great about Project Insight is I have these inputs for this, but then I can also see this over the life cycle of my project as well, right? So what I'm looking at here is a portfolio allocation report. This is where I can see when those funds will come in. I have it running as cumulative. So as we get more, it stacks up and it goes over time. This lines up perfectly with what we were just seeing as far as the budget dates on this proposal here. So this allows us to come in and visualize this in a report, and we're actually going to continue to add to this report with our labor and our non-labor costs next as we go. So
yeah, a lot of times as a project manager, you're actually having to do something like this in a totally different spreadsheet than your project. So you're double entering the data, get a graph like this. So with Project Insight, it's just keep track of the one schedule and it'll do it for you
automatically, which is the huge win. We were just talking with a customer yesterday who's bringing in their financial pieces, and I think I opened 6 spreadsheets to find something that looked just like this, right? So, with that said, we're going to then transition and we're going to talk a little bit about the labor costs associated with this particular project here. So, where we've gone is we've gone from our overview page, we're on the edit page, we were on the proposals, and now we're here on the task list itself. This is ultimately where we can see the work as it's flowing through. I can expand or contract the pieces here based on what I might need to see at any given point in time. But the idea of this is I can see things like how much effort we have planned and what role we have to take on that effort. The other component that we have right next to it is the cost associated with that, right? So each of these lines, each of these tasks, again, have that effort, have the resource, and then have a quantity of dollars that it will take to execute on those 2 hours based on a role, right? So I've got a portfolio director, I've got analysts. Each of these may have different rates, and those can be controlled via a rate card within Project Insight. And this one's pretty basic, where all we've done is take it by the resource types here to say, hey, a civil engineer is going to cost $88 per hour for us. We will bill out to what Steve's point earlier of having a distinct billable column if you want. We will bill those hours at $195 per hour. This can be expanded on to be the individual resources as opposed to the role. It can be the time enter, the time that code that they use when they enter, or even the type of task that they're doing, right, Steve?
It's also time codes and expense codes as well. And this is a great example of where I was earlier saying that the proposal and the budget is just a high level number. Now we're actually driving and creating a budget from the work breakdown structure. And we have a lot of clients that only do this. They don't necessarily do the budget or the proposal. They don't need to. You can actually just build your budget right in the plan, and that's fine. And a lot of people do that anyway with something like Microsoft Project. They don't actually go to the trouble of having the differentiation between the budget and the bottom up work breakdown structure. And I think there's an advantage to doing both, because you can see, put in what you initially think from your project request form all the way to the project, see what that number is, and the PM kind of knows, well, I got to keep this budget within $1 million. And then as they build their WBS, you wouldn't want to see your planned value be higher than, your original budget.
That's right. If I scroll down, and we'll do it when we add it in, but if I scroll down to the bottom, I can see that work total that we were seeing on the that overview page a little bit ago. So again, this is how we're tracking our labor components to this, but Project Insight does also allow us to track non-labor expenses as well. We call these work expenses, and this is where I can get in and say, hey, through this project, I'm going to spend $10,000 on permits and compliance, right? That's going to happen during this time, and that's how that'll flow into that portfolio allocation report that we'll show again in a little bit. But I can get granular as to what those costs actually end up being as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of projects have fixed costs that go with them. The labor in our tool is separated from the costs of the expenses, so you can take a look at them independently, and then we add it all up for you. And there is a question out from the audience about where the rate card is.
Oh,
Matt, do you want to quickly just show where she would edit that in a project?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, to create the rate card, it's tied to the company. So in this way, I can have different rate cards for different customers or different parts of the organization if I wanted. In this instance, I'm editing Atlas Industrial Group, who's our fictional company we're pretending to be, and I can see the rate cards here. If I need to add a new one, I can just click the plus rate right there. If we go back into our project add edit form, one of the options that we're presented with as we're creating the project is what rate card do you want to do? That will filter out based on the organization or the company. So if I have a customer that has their own specific rate card, I will be met with that option here as well. Right, Steve?
Yeah, and then one other little nuance to this is if you have templated rates, which a lot of people do, you just put a rate card on your own company, and those are always available to apply to any project. So you can have all your standard rates on your own company, but then you can have custom special rate cards by client, which is what he was showing you there.
That's right. Yeah, this is our standard one for the org, and then if we wanted to create anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our non-labor costs, we can get really detailed with it. You can see right here, I've kept it pretty high level for the time being, where I've just specifically said, hey, I've got a number for this, this specific type of work. If I were to click into this, I can get more detailed with this as well, right? So I can say, not only am I going to do one thing, have one expense on this particular task, I might have 10, right? It might be equipment, it might be materials, it might be permits, it might be all of these things, as opposed to the one-to-one that we're showing here. So it gives us a little bit more granularity in how we can do that. And then if we want, we can also push this out over time as well, right? So install roofing system here, I can see that the total that I have to spend on this is $150,000, but this is actually comprised of 3 pieces, which are about a few months apart each, right? So the idea is I can have this one hard number that will smooth out over the start and the end date, or if I need to get more specific, I can get more granular there with that.
Right, and then the reporting shows what happens is the Project Insight will actually automatically amortize these costs over the date range that you've chosen for your plan. So let's say the whole project shifts out into the future.
Yep.
Then those costs will auto shift. So you don't have to go back to your spreadsheet and update 50 cells. It'll just do it for you.
Thanks, Steve. I don't want to update 50 cells.
I know. Well, that's what you have to do if you don't if it's not connected to the project. And this is one of the reasons why we did this. We started this in the beginning to say, look, we're going to take a time tracking system and an expense report system and a project management system and connect them together, because a lot of times what PMs have to do is go pull all that data from 3 different systems and put it in. Even still today, still have to do that in Excel.
You're spot on. I think that the hours saved from this is very dramatic. The other component to all of this, and this can happen at the high level of the project as a whole, or it can happen into the granularity of each of these individual tasks, is I can tie it to a CapEx or OpEx amount as well, right? Is this a capital expense? Is this an operational expense? I can also get more granular, and it can be, subtype 1 for CapEx and subtype 2 for CapEx. It doesn't need to just be that general piece, but we can also, see that part of this equation as well here. Again, if we're needing to track these pieces, some or all of them can be enabled as we go.
Right, and then the CapEx, OpEx tracking, that's also amortized. So you can, this project, now that he's done that, he can see, well, how much in each month is the CapEx for this project? How much in each month? Yeah, there you go.
We're going to actually show that right now. So that initial portfolio allocation report, all we've done is add to it. So we originally started off with our proposed value of when we're getting that cash in. Now what we've added in here is our work expenses, right? So the idea of, as we have more that comes in, we can see that number grow, so we understand what our cost is. And to Steve's point, if I wanted to get more granular as far as, is it the contractor that we're spending this month? Is it the labor? Any of those different pieces, I can drill into the project itself. In this particular roll-up, I have it based on CapEx or OpEx. So that way, when Steve comes to me and says, hey, Matthew, on your project, how much are you going to spend in CapEx in August? I can come right here and say, hey, in August, I've got $350,000. Or Steve could have this report shared to him and just look at it himself, right? He doesn't even need to come to me to do that. He can just come right here to this. So it makes it really simple in being able to visualize and see this out over time. The other part that Steve mentioned is, if on that project plan I shift something, it'll shift all of this for us automatically as well, right? And we're going to see what this looks like on a broader sense of portfolio, where we can see lots of these as we continue through. The next piece of the equation that we want to talk about is the idea that Project Insight doesn't just capture my planned values. It can actually also get my actual values in here as well. And there are inputs where, based on the hours that I log as an individual, those actual hours are being put in. Based on the expenses that we put in, as those come in, those actual work expenses or non-labor costs are put in. But now what we're looking at is this, again, same project plan. I have that work time column, so the dollars associated with my effort. I have an actual column here to understand if there's a differentiation. So I can see here I spent a few $100s more on funding authorization than I had planned. And then I can do the same thing for the non-labor costs as well. I had 10,000 planned and I actually executed that. And then that will then roll into a total work total or actual total for each of those lines as a whole. Those then roll into the summaries that they happen to be a part of, or down to that project level as well. So, in this particular instance, I had, over 380 million to do this particular 3,800,000 to do this project, and it looks like I'm going to get it done for 3,386,000 and change, right? So we can see what that looks like.
And those actuals are driven from time entries, not just one number, but individual entries. If you can get your team to collaborate with you and use the tool together, that makes it even easier. I mean, a PM can enter them themselves, or you can get your team to come help you by collaborating together. And those actuals are all in real time. So if somebody enters another hour right now, we're going to get an updated budget right now, just from even in this visualization and all the reports. So it really can save you a lot of time by having everybody kind of work in the system together. The other thing is that the time and the expense can come from an outside system, which we'll talk about.
That's actually what I was just going to say. I think that was a great natural segue, Steve, because the idea is maybe I've got my dev team in DevOps and I have my financial actuals coming in from NetSuite, right? Project Insight allows for all of those to be forced here, where it is still in real time, even if we're not using Project Insight as the input method for those actuals there.
Yeah, we have customers that do it both ways. Obviously, if you're doing professional services, it's a lot easier to get everybody to enter their time in our system. But we do have customers that enter time in a whole other system, and the PMs will bring it all in. We'll either do the integration for you as a service or use the API. You guys can do it yourselves.
That's right. Now, again, I can look at over time the same concept of planned versus actual totals here. So what we've flipped here is this line is now my planned value, and the bar is my actuals here. And we're going to do a power tutorial on reporting in the near future, so look out for that to understand how you can build these graphics yourself within the tool. It's really simple via the filter, but this is where I can then say, hey, we planned on this, and we actually executed on this.
Right.
If there's deviation, Project Insight does also allow for automatic notifications. So I can let Steve, as my sponsor on my project, know that I'm getting off track from my budget or my milestones or any other piece. Now,
yeah, I mean, like health indicators are driven off of this data. Like you see that blue line, that's your plan value. That's what the hours and the expenses entered into the project plan, driven from that. The green line is from those time entries that are entered by users or yourselves. So
that's
totally easy to see the difference between those numbers.
And you can still drill into those CapEx, OpEx pieces if that's what you want to do, right? Hey, where did you end up in CapEx? Where did you end up in OpEx?
Well, the time entries the actuals get tagged against those categories too.
Yep, exactly. Now, this project may be one of many. So what we've done is we've gone into our program level, our portfolio level, where I can see the different programs and the projects that make this up. So Phoenix Regional Headquarters is just one of many of the projects we're working on. I can see these high-level numbers, what was proposed, what are we planning. If I wanted to add an additional column, I could say, what's the difference between those two. This level gives me, visibility into these projects over time via a cross-project Gantt chart, but it also lets me get into a task list where I can see all of these in one shot, and this will do the exact same views that we had on the project level. So if I want to see what my planned versus actual values are here, now if I'm in charge of this portfolio, I can say, hey, for mixed use, this is how we're performing. For healthcare work, this is how we're doing. For corporate, this is how it is, and then see the projects below. This report as well, or this data can then also be spread into that portfolio allocation report that we've been looking at. So I can still see all of those pieces out over time to understand how's my cash flow looking? How are we performing? All of those different components there. All of this data within Project Insight as a whole is accessible via our reports home as a whole. So I can come in and say, hey, I want to run a time entry report or an expense entry report or these portfolio allocation reports. This particular piece, this is a task report where I can see those same numbers that we were just talking about. I'm looking at everything within that portfolio. So if I want to filter this out to actually see how our performance is doing, I'm going to say, you know what, I actually only care about completed tasks. I'm going to rerun this report, and then that's going to scrub out anything that's not yet done. If I want to group these together, because Steve said, hey, Matthew, how much did we pay contractors last month as an example, right? I can come in here and say, I'm not 100% certain, but give me 1 second. Contractors, here we go. Here's what we've paid out over whatever sort of time I'm displaying on this particular report. It looks like we've paid out just under 3.6 million, which is great because our budget was 3.6. So we're right in line with what we need. In fact, we're 5,000 under what we were planning. That idea of reporting, though, can get granular. It can be high level of looking at all of the projects at once on a project report, or again, I can be looking at that data over time on a Gantt chart as well. The last piece that I'm going to really breeze through because of the time here is a what if scenario. So this concept is, hey, I might not have a preset plan on how I want to execute this work yet. You know, I've sold the order, so to speak. So I've got my proposal and my disbursements of when we're going to get our money. But I'm not exactly certain as to what contractors I'm going to use or what timelines anybody's going to have. So I can use Project Insight's what if simulations to plan some of this out for us. In fact, if I come in here, I've got 2 what ifs that we have. The first one is, what if I use Summit Build Partners as my contractor? I can see how much time, how much budget that's going to take to get this done using this contractor. Or if I use Skyline Structural Partners, which again are just made up companies, I can see what the total time for them to execute on this and then what the total budget will be there. Both of these variations, I can come in here and edit and change any of the numbers, right? If I want to, as we're doing for these what if simulations. These do not impact the general project plan until I say apply or commit these changes. This then lets me come into our portfolio allocation report where I can run these simulations and say, hey, what if we did these guys? What if we use Summit Build instead? And I can see what that's going to do from my budgetary perspective as we go versus using these guys, right? Where they're a little bit more expensive, but maybe I'm getting the work done a little bit faster. This then allows me to have that conversation with my executive, Steve, or my sponsor and say, hey, Steve, I've got 2 options here. Here's the pros, here are the cons of each of them. Let me show you what those look like. Which one do you want to commit to? Do you want to use Summit on this one or do you want to use Skyline, right? So
this is really great because you don't have to build out the whole entire thing. You can just have your regular plan, what you thought you were going to do, and then the what if allows you to make changes to those tasks without committing them.
That's right. We do have our help documentation in the QR code right now, so please feel free to scan that to get to that to learn any of these different pieces here. As far as which one of our plans includes some of these different features, you know, they're all included in the enterprise license. Otherwise, some are included in business, and Pro has a handful of these as well. If you have any questions about how this can be put to use for you as a customer of Project Insight, please reach out to your assigned representative. If you are not yet a customer of ours, please reach out to sales@projectinsight.com. We'd be happy to show you how we can streamline your project financials with your execution here. We greatly appreciate everybody's time. Steve, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Good job, Matt.
Have a great day, all.